The last grain of rice rattled in the bottom of the pot. Alara stared at it, a single white speck against the worn stainless steel, a perfect symbol of her life. Empty. She closed her eyes, the familiar burn of panic tightening her chest. In the other room, her 2-year-old son, Leo, whimpered in his sleep, a sound that sliced directly into her soul. He was hungry. Soon, he would wake up properly, and she had nothing for him. The can of formula on the counter was so light it felt like a ghost. One last scoop remained, not even enough for a full bottle. Her phone screen glowed with a mocking brightness, a bank balance of -$17 and a string of overdue notices. The rent was a week late. The eviction notice, a stark red paper she had hidden under a pile of junk mail, felt like a ticking bomb. Pride had kept her from asking for help for so long. After her husband, David, had died in that sudden, senseless accident, she had sworn to stand on her own 2 feet, to be strong for Leo. But strength did not pay the bills. It did not fill an empty stomach. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her contacts, a graveyard of forgotten acquaintances and professional connections from a life that no longer felt like hers. Before Leo, before the grief and the debt, she had been a sharp financial analyst with a promising career. Now, she was just a desperate mother. Her gaze landed on a name, Robert Henderson. He was a senior partner from her old firm, a kind, portly man who had always had a soft spot for her. At David's funeral, he had squeezed her hand and told her to call if she ever needed anything. She had never intended to take him up on it. It felt like admitting defeat. Defeat, she thought bitterly, was staring back at her from the bottom of the rice pot. Swallowing the hard lump of shame in her throat, she typed out a message, her words feeling clumsy and humiliating. "Mr. Henderson, it's Alara Vance. I am so sorry to bother you. I'm in a terrible bind. Could I possibly borrow a small amount for rent and groceries? I can pay you back from my first paycheck as soon as I find work. Anything would help." She read it over, hating every single word. It sounded so pathetic. She almost deleted it, but then Leo cried out again, a thin, plaintive sound. She pressed send before she could lose her nerve, her thumb jabbing the screen as if trying to push the shame away with it. She had miskeyed one of the last digits, a simple, fatalistic error born of haste and trembling hands. Miles away, in a penthouse office that overlooked the glittering city like a king's throne room, Damien Devereux stared at the same skyline, but saw none of its beauty. The city was just a collection of lights, a monument to a world he felt utterly disconnected from. His desk was a vast expanse of polished mahogany, empty save for a single laptop and a small, silver-framed photograph that was always turned toward him. He ran a multi-billion-dollar global tech empire with ruthless efficiency, yet in this silent room, he was just a man haunted by ghosts. A notification chimed on his private phone, a number he kept exclusively for his most trusted inner circle. He glanced at it, expecting a late-night report from his European division. Instead, he saw a message from an unknown number. He read the text from Alara Vance, his brow furrowing. It was clearly a mistake, a plea meant for someone else. He should have deleted it. It was an intrusion, a messy bit of human desperation that had no place in his sterile, controlled world. Yet, he did not delete it. He read it again. "I'm in a terrible bind." The simple, unadorned honesty of the phrase struck him. There was no elaborate sob story, just a raw, direct plea. It resonated with a part of him he had long since buried. He thought of his own beginnings, of nights spent sleeping in a cramped Parisian apartment, wondering where his next meal would come from. But more than that, the mention of groceries, of needing help for a child he presumed she had, touched the rawest nerve of all. He looked at the silver frame on his desk, a smiling woman with bright eyes holding a swaddled infant. His wife, Isabel. His daughter, Chloe, lost to him forever on a rain-slicked road 6 years ago. An impulse he had not felt in years surged through him. It was not pity. It was something else, a flicker of purpose in the vast emptiness. He could fix this. This small, random problem that had landed in his lap. He could erase it with the flick of a finger. He typed a reply, his message as direct and decisive as any business directive. "I am not Mr. Henderson, but I can help. What is your bank information? A wire will be sent immediately." Alara's phone buzzed, and her heart leaped into her throat. She fumbled for it, expecting a gentle refusal or, worse, No reply at all. The message she saw made no sense. A cold wave of fear washed over her. A scam. It had to be a scam. Someone was playing a cruel trick on her. "Who is this?" she typed back, her fingers stiff. The reply was instantaneous. "My name is Damien. The offer is genuine. I will also offer you a job. My company is Devereux Industries. Be at the main lobby tomorrow at 9 in the morning. A car will be waiting for you at 8:30. I will also arrange for childcare. Send me your address and the bank details. This is not a request." Devereux Industries. The name was like a thunderclap. It was one of the largest tech firms in the world. Its founder, Damien Devereux, was a reclusive genius, a legend in the business world, known for his cold demeanor and unparalleled success. This was impossible. It had to be a joke. But the tone of the message, commanding, efficient, utterly devoid of emotion, was chillingly authoritative. What did she have to lose? Her dignity was already gone. With a sense of fatalistic surrender, she sent her address and the account number that was currently $17 in the red. She did not expect anything to happen. She expected to wake up in the morning to the same crushing reality. But 5 minutes later, another alert buzzed on her phone. It was from her bank. A deposit had been made. Her eyes widened in disbelief. It was not a small loan. It was $50,000. Alara stared at the number, feeling the world tilt on its axis. She dropped the phone as if it had burned her. This was not help. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous and incomprehensible. The next morning, a sleek black town car was waiting outside her rundown apartment building, just as the text had promised. A professionally dressed woman from a high-end nanny service arrived moments later, her smile warm and reassuring. Alara, dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, a slightly worn but clean blouse and skirt, felt like she was walking into a dream. She kissed Leo goodbye, her heart aching with a mixture of terror and a fragile, burgeoning hope. The Devereux Industries Tower was a shard of glass and steel that pierced the sky. The lobby was a cavern of white marble and hushed efficiency. When she gave her name at the security desk, the guard nodded respectfully and immediately ushered her to a private elevator. She was not a candidate. She was an expected guest. The elevator ascended silently, her stomach churning with every floor. She was led directly into an office that was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city she had only ever seen from the ground. A man stood with his back to her, gazing out at the vista. When he turned, she recognized him instantly from business magazines. Damien Devereux. He was younger than she expected, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through her. His expression was unreadable, a mask of cool neutrality. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice was a low baritone with a distinct French accent, the same clipped, authoritative tone from his texts. "Thank you for coming." "Why am I here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The money. I don't understand." "I have reviewed your professional history," he said, ignoring her question. He gestured to a chair. "Your work at Sterling Financial was exemplary. Your analytical skills are top tier. You were laid off due to downsizing after your husband's passing. You have been unable to find commensurate work since." A chill went down her spine. He knew everything. "How did you find all that out?" "I have resources," he said simply. "I am offering you a position as a senior financial strategist in my acquisitions department. The salary is $300,000 a year, with full benefits and a housing allowance. You will report directly to me." Alara stared at him, speechless. This was insanity. No one offered a job like this. No one gave away $50,000 to a stranger who sent a wrong number text. Her initial suspicion hardened into certainty. He wanted something. Something more than an employee. "No," she said, finding her voice. "I can't accept. What do you want from me?" A flicker of something. Was it frustration? Pain? Crossed his features before the mask slipped back into place. "I want your expertise, Miss Vance. Nothing more." "I don't believe you," she shot back, her pride surging past her fear. "People like you don't do things like this out of kindness. You're either crazy or you're a predator. Which one is it?" The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and ugly. Damien's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. He just looked at her, his gaze intense. She expected him to throw her out, to call security. Instead, he walked over to his desk and picked up the small, silver-framed photograph. He held it for a moment before turning it around for her to see. It was a picture of a beautiful woman and a baby, both of them laughing, their faces filled with pure, unadulterated joy. 6 years ago, he began, his voice suddenly raw, the polished accent fraying at the edges. I was driving my wife, Isabel, and our 6-month-old daughter, Chloe, home from my parents' house. It was raining. I was distracted, arguing with my father on the phone about the business. I looked away from the road for just a second. He paused, his throat working. The silence in the room was absolute. A truck hydroplaned. I woke up in the hospital. They were gone. He placed the photo back on the desk with a hand that was not quite steady. Your text message last night. A mother, desperate, trying to provide for her child. It was a reminder of everything I had and everything I failed to protect. Giving you this opportunity, ensuring your child is safe and provided for. It is not charity. It is a penance, a way to honor their memory. The only way I know how. The story fell upon Alara like a physical weight, crushing her suspicion, her anger, her fear. All of it dissolved, replaced by a wave of profound, aching empathy. The cold, powerful billionaire vanished, and in his place was a man hollowed out by grief, trapped in a prison of his own making. The money, the job, it was not about her. It was about a woman named Isabel and a baby named Chloe. I'm so sorry, she whispered, the words feeling utterly inadequate. He gave a short, sharp nod, as if to dismiss her sympathy, but she could see the sheen of moisture in his eyes. The job is yours, Alara. If you want it. Your son deserves a good life. She took the job. It was the only choice she could make. The following months were a whirlwind. Alara moved into a beautiful, secure apartment provided by the company. Leo thrived in a top-rated daycare. At work, Alara poured herself into her role, her sharp mind, long dormant, sparking back to life. She was good at this. She had forgotten how good. She worked closely with Damien, and the professional wall between them slowly began to crumble. He was a demanding boss, but fair and brilliant. She saw flashes of the man behind the corporate armor. The way his eyes would soften whenever she mentioned Leo, the quiet melancholy that would sometimes settle over him when he thought no one was watching. He began to join her for lunch, then dinner. He met Leo, and the effect was immediate and startling. The little boy, usually shy with strangers, toddled right up to the imposing CEO and held up his arms. Damien froze for a second, a look of panic and pain on his face, before he carefully, hesitantly, lifted the child. A genuine, unguarded smile touched Damien's lips for the first time since she had met him. After that, he became a regular presence in their lives, a quiet pillar of strength. He was not just her boss, he was becoming her friend. And perhaps, a small, terrified part of her admitted, something more. The comfort of their new life was shattered by a man named Marcus Thorne. He was a senior board member, a holdover from before Damien's father had retired, and he oozed a slick, resentful ambition. He had been passed over for the CEO position in favor of Damien, and his bitterness was a poorly concealed secret. He saw Alara's sudden appearance and rapid rise as a weakness in Damien's armor, an anomaly to be exploited. The attack came without warning. Alara arrived at work one morning to find her access card denied. Two stern-faced security guards escorted her to a conference room where Damien and the head of internal affairs were waiting. On the table was a file. It contained evidence, emails, server logs, financial transfers, that seemed to prove she had been leaking sensitive data about an upcoming acquisition to Thorne's shadow company. She had been framed perfectly and completely. I didn't do this, she said, her voice shaking as she looked at the damning printouts. Damien, you have to believe me. Thorne had orchestrated the meeting to happen while Damien was on a conference call, hoping to isolate her and force a confession. But Damien had cut his call short. He looked from the file to Alara's terrified face. There was no hesitation in his eyes. I know, he said, his voice calm and steady, and we are going to prove it. Thorne had made a critical error. He had underestimated both Alara's intelligence and Damien's loyalty. While security protocols had locked her out of the main system, Damien gave her his personal access. They barricaded themselves in his office, turning it into a war room. For 36 hours, they worked without sleep, fueled by coffee and a desperate urgency. He's too smart to leave a direct trail, Damien muttered, scrolling through endless lines of code. The data packets were routed through a dozen encrypted servers. It's a digital ghost. Then he must have made a mistake somewhere else, Alara insisted, her mind racing. A crime like this isn't just about data, it's about money. He had to be paid. Think, what was I working on right before this happened? The quarterly budget analysis. She closed her eyes, picturing the spreadsheets. There was an anomaly. A vendor payment to a shell corporation. It was small, just a few $1,000s. I flagged it as a probable accounting error. Damien's head snapped up. Which vendor? She told him. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Within minutes, he had bypassed 3 levels of security. The small payment was not an error. It was a key. It unlocked a hidden ledger, a complex web of embezzlement and fraud that Thorn had been running for years. The corporate espionage was just a smokescreen, a way to frame Alara and discredit Damien while Thorn covered his real crime and prepared to short the company's stock. They had him. The emergency board meeting was tense. Marcus Thorn, smug and confident, presented his case against Alara with theatrical gravity. He painted her as a grateful charity case who had turned traitor. When he finished, he looked at Damien, expecting him to capitulate. Instead, Damien simply projected the hidden ledger onto the main screen for the entire board to see. Thorn's face went white. The numbers told the whole story, an undeniable narrative of greed and betrayal. His downfall was swift and absolute. Security escorted a sputtering, defeated Thorn from the room. In the silence of the empty boardroom, the adrenaline finally drained away, leaving Alara and Damien exhausted but victorious. They stood by the large window, the city lights twinkling below them. "You saved my company," Damien said quietly. "You saved me first," she replied, looking up at him. "You believed in me when no one else would have." The space between them crackled with an energy that had been building for months. He reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch sending a jolt through her. "Alara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Before you and Leo came into my life, this was all I had." He gestured to the city, to the building. "A monument to what I lost. It was empty. You filled the silence. You and your son have brought me back to life. Je t'aime." Tears welled in her eyes as she finally allowed herself to feel the depth of her own emotions. "I love you too," she whispered. He lowered his head and kissed her, a kiss that was not about gratitude or relief, but about a shared future, a promise of healing and hope. 1 year later, the company's annual charity gala was in full swing. Alara stood on a balcony overlooking the glittering affair, a glass of champagne in her hand. She was no longer Alara Vance, struggling analyst. She was Alara Devereux, the company's new vice president of strategy and Damien's wife. She wore a stunning sapphire gown, but her brightest accessory was the look of serene happiness on her face. Damien came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, following her gaze to where Leo, dressed in a tiny tuxedo, was charming a group of board members near the dance floor. "He has your confidence," Damien murmured in her ear. "And your stubbornness," she laughed, leaning back against him. She felt completely, utterly safe. She looked out at the city, the same view she had seen from his office on that terrifying first day. It no longer looked intimidating. It looked like home. She thought of the desperate text message, the wrong number that had turned out to be so right. It was a miracle, one born from a moment of utter despair. A single, misdialed plea had not just saved her, it had saved him, too. Together, they had built a new family from the broken pieces of their pasts, creating a future that was more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to imagine.